Chapter 7, The Hierarchy of the Sciences. Now that we have the 10 dimensions of mass electric spacetime laid out in detail, the next question that often comes to the mind of normies is, so what? So what? So what? Look at these ungrateful little... See, I just gave you the fundamental tools through which you can apply the study of all of objective reality, and a lot of subjective reality too, and you ask me, so what? What you should be asking me is, how would you recommend I apply the knowledge of these dimensions to the fields of scientific inquiry, Sensei Snavely? Calm down, Sensei. We can use this opportunity to pique the normies' interest in science, so I will just answer their assumed-to-be question of, so what? So, now we can use these dimensions to ask questions about the nature of reality. We can ask questions that we once took for granted, like, why is Mercury in retrograde? And give very specific astronomical explanations on why, how, and when Mercury begins to move counter to its usual predicted patterns. We can ask, why is the mitochondria the powerhouse of the cell? And give very specific biological and chemical explanations of how the cell behaves, and observe what the cell does to try to combat their inevitable death. So what I am trying to say is, don't ask me, ask the universe! The methodology of asking the universe what is true has many universal rules and applications, depending on what the scope of the inquiry is. Different rules do emerge, like some put higher emphasis on the subjective dimensions than others, but their end goal is all the same. Every science seeks to ask the question, what is true? And let me tell you. The hierarchy of the sciences was first introduced by Auguste Comte in the 19th century. He proposed the law of 3 stages of the evolution of society, which consists of a theological stage, an abstract/metaphysical stage, and then finally a positive stage. Within the positive stage, he proposed that knowledge would begin to accrue within the society, and the individuals would transition from a supernatural to a natural view of the world. He felt the world was in the positive stage in the 1800s, and that sociology was a sort of ultimate or final science that would emerge from this stage. Comte's hierarchy of the sciences was essentially limited to the natural sciences, and they consisted of the 5 layers of mathematics, astronomy, terrestrial physics, chemistry, and physiology in that order. Many people have added to the hierarchy since then, and now I hope to present to the normies the full and complete hierarchy of the sciences, as endowed upon me by Lord Zilch and Lord Isnara. Well, each layer of the hierarchy can be split off and ask more specific questions, and different layers can combine to ask even more questions, but this is dimensionalism's complete interpretation of the hierarchy of the sciences. Enjoy. There are about 11 layers to the hierarchy of sciences. Now, what makes one layer superior to another can be derived by asking 2 simple questions. 1. What is the physical size/philosophical scope of the field of science? And 2. What were the unique methodologies that were used to achieve this knowledge? The largest physical scope at the top of the hierarchy is astronomy, the first layer. The astrophysical laws were made by observing how all the observable massive objects/bodies interact with each other. Astronomy asks, what is the universe doing? The second layer is the geology of a single astronomical object. Weather patterns, the water cycle, the nitrogen cycle, specific rock formations, ecosystem studies, and tectonic plate movements can all fit in this category. Geology asks, what is the asteroid/moon/planet/star/black hole doing? The third layer is sociology. The scope of sociology is to study the group of a specific type of life. Political studies, certain religious studies, and criminology are studied at this level. Sociological studies are usually reliant on subjective qualia to reach their conclusions. Sociology generally asks, what is the culture doing? The fourth layer is psychology. The scope of psychology is to study the behavior, and if possible, the mind of the individual multicellular life form. Learning processes, personality, intelligence, abnormalities from the culture are psychological studies. Psychological studies also deal with a lot of subjective qualia, because they attempt to understand the oftentimes human subject. Psychology asks, what is the individual life form doing/thinking? The fifth layer is physiology. Physiology studies the entire interactive cellular system we view as the life form, and can include just one system of the whole, like the skeletal system, the muscular system, the nervous system, the endocrine system, and the digestive system. Physiology asks, what is the individual objectively made of? The sixth layer is biology. The scope of biology ranges from the cell to the entire interactive cellular system we view as the individual life form, and because of this, I sometimes lump together physiology with biology. If we say psychology deals with the subject of the individual life form, biology deals with the object of the individual life form. Biology generally asks, what is life objectively made of? The seventh layer is chemistry. The scope of chemistry is to study how fundamental objects interact and behave. Molecules, polymers, and atoms are studied at this layer. Chemistry generally asks, what is matter made of? And also, what is matter doing? I would also say that chemistry is the first layer that knowing the 10 dimensions of mass electric spacetime would directly come in handy. The eighth layer is physics. Physics as a field of science dimensionalizes everything. It seeks to give objective dimensional qualities to everything in mass electric spacetime, and how these things interact with each other. Physics generally asks, what is everything doing? Now on paper, this question isn't all that different from astronomy's question, what is the universe doing? But physics can more specifically ask, what is everything made of? So if quantum mechanics and the standard model of particle physics are asked at the physics level, Einstein's theory of general relativity and Newtonian gravity are asked at the astronomy level. The only thing that really distinguishes these two layers are the physical scope of study. The ninth layer is mathematics. Math seeks to quantify everything and help distinguish and communicate one thing from two things from half a thing with a common logical language. Quantitative communication is generally preferred to qualitative communication in science. This is probably why Comte added math as a science, but excluded philosophy. Math generally asks, how many things are there? The 10th layer is philosophy. Qualitative language has to be put forth to communicate any sort of scientific knowledge, and that requires coherent, sound thought to be deemed as genuine knowledge and science within the culture. Math is great, but we can't even say 1 + 1 = 2 without the qualitative understanding of numbers, addition, and equivalence. Philosophy generally asks, what is a thing? If you paid attention during chapter 4, you should already have a pretty good idea of what the answer to this is. Before getting into the last layer, you may have noticed that the previous layers had a pattern to them. First, there are multiple things, and then a solitary thing. Astronomy studies all of the universe, then geology studies one massive object in the universe. Sociology studies a bunch of similar life forms, then psychology studies a single life form. Physiology can look at a collection of cells, then biology can observe the smallest indication of cellular life. Chemistry studies multiple particles, and physics can get down to calculating the motion of a single particle. And math generally focuses on the multiplicity of things in and of themselves, the multitude of quantitudes. And philosophy tries to focus on the single thing, the thing in and of itself. This analogy breaks down from here, but it's still useful for remembering the layers later on in your life. The 11th layer is religion and the arts. To even be open to the sound and scientific knowledge given within the hierarchy, you have to be willing to subjectively accept any particular claim science makes as true. Sometimes the knowledge is held on this level isn't even a language, but an abstraction or a feeling. The methodology is based on nothing but faith, and is sometimes paired with bad philosophy. Religion and the arts generally proclaim, here is a thing, / the thing, and solely for religion, we have the truth of everything! The biggest reason why Comte's positivist stage hasn't fully manifested in the worldwide culture is that the individual can nevertheless be lost in abstractions and otherwise nebulous thought. And because numerous people still claim knowledge on the basis of religion, any objective evidence that is presented to that particular individual will sometimes be dismissed via a grotesque implementation of confirmation bias when the information contradicts the claims of the religion. In simpler terms, I mean that religion generally sucks at communicating truth, and can lead you to believe false things while ignoring true things found within the hierarchy of sciences. I would suggest you stick with artistic expressions for abstractions, and recognize that religions are also just imaginary constructs. Well, did I get southern there for a second? Sorry, y'all. At least philosophy requires cohesion to be accepted by other like-minded philosophers, who could also just be implemented their confirmation biases on the paper and just, fuck. Philosophy is also just purely an imaginary construct, whose proposed axioms in an argument, if deemed true by the individual, form a logical and sound argument from the perspective of the individual reading it. Okay. The difference between philosophy and religion is that philosophy should not be able to operate on presuppositions, only supposed and graded axioms, and religion and the arts can operate on presuppositions. Except for the times when, we ignore that there are presuppositional axioms beyond what is said or written, which lead us to agree with and approve of a philosophical belief structure that is actually incoherent and just presuppose that philosophy is superior to religion and other abstractions and call it good. Always be open to questioning your own beliefs. If you stop at religion as your primary source of knowledge, you may be heeding your own ability to think for yourself and come up with your own philosophical framework. Even though the hierarchy, all matter, all knowledge, and everything is fundamentally based on nothing, praise el Janata, that doesn't mean the hierarchy, the matter that helps make up our thought processes, and the knowledge we end up believing to be true also doesn't exist. The hierarchy, all matter, and objectively true knowledge exist just as you do. They exist, and they don't exist.